Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Sanyog Jain from Naipar Mohali. Today we are going to discuss about a module, challenges in the effective delivery of proteins and peptides under the paper Novel Drug Delivery System Part 2. So students, let's see what we are going to learn in this module. First, introduction of the problems with the proteins, then factors that affect the stability of proteins and peptides, then we will move to formulation and process related factors, then we will discuss various challenges in the oral delivery of proteins, and lastly we will discuss different approaches like permeation enhancer, enzyme inhibition, lipidization or nanocarrier based strategy which are used for the oral delivery of proteins and peptides with relevant case studies. So let's start with the introduction. We know the proteins are very large and unstable molecule as compared to the conventional or normal drug molecule, and their structure is held together by weak non-covalent forces like hydrogen bonding and other hydrophobic interaction. Proteins are easily destroyed by the relatively mild storage condition and various other denaturating stimuli. They are easily destroyed or eliminated by the body, and further they are hard to obtain in the large quantity. Proteins are also susceptible to elimination by the B and T cell. Proteolysis also takes place by the endo and exopeptidase, which specifically cleaves the peptide bonds and converts proteins into the free amino acids. Small proteins which having the molecular weight less than 30 kilodalton, they are easily filtered out by the kidney, because we know the threshold molecular weight for the filtration of any molecule by the kidney is 40,000. Further, proteins also shows allergic reaction which may lead to development of the toxicity, and this is because of their impurity in the protein formulation or structural integrity. Further, the loss of protein may also occur in the container enclosure due to the adsorption onto the closure or container and insolubility. This figure presents the overview of general challenges associated with the development of a protein pharmaceutical. So challenges are associated with the storage of the protein, with the means native protein, with the formulation. During the formulation, various formulation steps can cause degradation of the protein molecule, and lastly the challenges are associated with the delivery. For example, in the case of oral route of administration, the enzymatic degradation of the proteins inside the GIT or their permeability across the intestinal mucosa, it is the major challenge. The challenges in the protein stability, that is the in vitro challenges or the factors which affect the stability of the proteins in the bottle. So these includes various non-covalent interaction or covalent interactions. So non-covalent interaction means either denaturation of the protein, aggregation of the protein, precipitation or adsorption of the protein. In the covalent interaction, it can have some irreversible chemical changes like deamidation, oxidation, breaking or exchange of the disulfide bonds, or lastly the proteolysis. Various protein denaturants which cause the instability of the protein, so that includes the high temperature. Because of the high temperature, it leads to the folding or aggregation of the protein. Some proteins are also susceptible to the low temperature, that is known as cold denaturation. Heavy metals, they are highly toxic and efficiently induce the stress response into the proteins. The examples include lead and cadmium. Various proteotoxic agents, for example, alcohols or cross-linking agents, these can also lead to irreversible changes in the protein structure. Oxygen radicals or ionizing radiation, these can cause permanent damage to the protein structure. And lastly, chaotrops, that includes the urea, guanidine or guanidine hydrochloride, and these are highly potent denaturating proteins and often used in the protein unfolding studies. So now we are discussing various chemical and physical consideration and protein and peptide stability. So deamidation is the first step, primary reaction mechanism for the uh, stability of the protein. So it leads to the formation of a deprotonated amide nitrogen, and it involves rate determining nucleophilic attack on the side chain carbonyl, which leads to the formation of the intermediate and ultimately lead to the hydrolysis. So this deamidation process shows pH dependency as well as temperature dependency. So under the condition of the strong acid like pH 1 to 2, deamidation by the direct hydrolysis of the amide side chain becomes more favorable and then the formation of the cyclic amide. It also shows temperature dependency both in solution state as well as in the solid states. However, in the solution state, the deamidation of the small peptides tends to follow an Arrhenius relationship, and deamidation rate of protein shows temperature dependency even in the at the neutral pH. In the solid states, this Arrhenius relation is not observed. However, the deamidation in the solid state shows a marked dependency upon the temperature. So these are the factors that leads to an irreversible loss of the protein structural integrity and hence the function of the protein. These includes temperature, pressure, pH, concentration of the denaturing agent. So temperature and pH we have already discussed. The concentration of the denaturing agents like guanidine hydrochloride, various surfactants, or exposure of the proteins to mechanical disruption. So this leads to the denaturation or unfolding of the protein macromolecule, which eventually leads to the loss of tertiary structure of the protein because of the formation of disordered protein. Various adjuvants and excipients are commonly used in the protein formulation like any conventional formulations. So this includes buffer. So buffer catalyze appears to occurs in some but not all peptides and proteins. So buffers like phosphate buffer, carbonate buffer, they have no influence on the rate of deamidation of this valine, asparagine, glycine, alanine peptide. The ionic strength of the buffer also influence the protein stability. So in selected peptides and proteins, the catalytic activity of the phosphate, it is reduced moderately in the presence of salts like sodium chloride, and out of these salts, sodium chloride shows the least protective activity against the deamidation process. Solvents also influence the protein and peptide stability. So in the medium with reduced dielectric constant, the peptide bond nitrogen, it is less likely to ionize. However, the lower dielectric constant media is resulted in significantly lower rate of deamidation. The similar rate of deamidation for different co-solvent system of the same effective dielectric constant indicates that the changes in the viscosity and water content of the medium does not play a significant role in the stability of the protein. Various formulation factors and oxidation which affect the stability of the protein. So first is the polyether, various formulation excipients. So polyether or polyethylene glycols and PEG linked surfactants, these are most widely used in the protein pharmaceuticals or any other pharmaceutical component as excipients. So these can stabilize the protein against aggregation and thermal denaturation. PEG and non-ionic polyether surfactants, these are known to produce peroxides upon aging, and this promotes the oxidation and hence low content should be used. Sugars and polyols, these are also employed as lyoprotectant commonly in the stabilization of the protein pharmaceuticals, but the moderately high concentration of the sugar and polyols seems to inhibit the oxidation of the proteins. Antioxidants, these protect both small molecules and peptide protein drugs from oxidation. So antioxidants can become potent pro-oxidants in the presence of trace amounts of transition metals ions like ascorbic acid. In the absence of metal ions, cysteine as a free amino acid may act as an effective antioxidant, and tocopherol inhibits the photooxidation of proteins within the lipid membranes by virtue of its singlet oxygen scavenger activity. So various processing and packaging steps can also lead to the degradation or instability in the protein. So removal of oxygen by degassing process effective in inhibiting the oxidation of the proteins. So very low concentration of the oxygen in the head space can promote oxidation. Hence the head space is generally filled with the nitrogen. Lyophilization, it is generally recommended for the stabilization of the protein. So the residual moisture enhance the degradation of the protein, which pro-oxidant activities of the moisture it is also reported, and mobilization of the catalyst exposing the new reaction sites by swelling and decreasing the viscosity of the salt phase. Oxidation inhibition activity of the salt water, it is carried out due to the retardation of the oxygen diffusion, promotion of the radical recombination, and decreased catalytic effectiveness of the transition metals and dilution of the catalyst. Solvation. So various ions can also interact with the proteins in a variety of ways, like salting in or salting out effect. So increasing the solubility of a protein with low salt concentration is salting in, and it is due to the Debye-Huckel screening. At this low concentration, the ion interaction with the proteins are non-specific and electrostatic. However, at higher concentration, typically greater than 1, protein salting out dominates, which is linearly related with the increasing ionic strength and is relatively ion specific. Stabilization or denaturation of the protein. So several cryoprotectants are low molecular weight molecules that are produced by the living organism in response to the environmental stress like freezing or osmotic stress. They generally stabilize the protein structure. The best example includes sugars like sucrose, glucose, lactose, trehalose, and polyhydric alcohols like mannitol, ethylene glycol, sorbitol, xylitol, inositol, distrol, etc. Surfactants. These are also widely used as a formulation component. So sodium dodecyl sulfate, that is SDS, it causes unfolding of the protein and is generally used in the gel electrophoresis to disrupt the tertiary and secondary structure of the protein. Charge-charge interaction between the negatively charged SDS and positively charged sites are responsible for this interaction. SDS has no destabilizing effects on the protein with large negative charge densities. In contrast to SDS protein interaction, surfactants are commonly used for their stabilizing properties, for example, to increase refolding yields in the protein purification. Protein formulation also commonly contain polymers, polyols, and non-ionic and ionic surfactants as stabilizing agent. So that's why the cautions or precautions are required while screening the suitable surfactants with respect to the stability of the protein. Now various processing factors that affect the stability of protein and peptide formulation. So first is the shear or mechanical stress. So shear may be due to mixing, so flow both in solution as well as in the powder form, filtration and passage through the pumps. The logarithmic relationship between the loss in activity and shear time, it has been recorded. And lyophilization, it is the frequently used technique for the long-term stabilization of the protein molecule. So dehydration and lyophilization can also lead to the degradation of the protein molecule because of the several mechanisms. So that includes either cold denaturation or concentration or crystallization of the salt, either change in the pH, sometimes the creation of the solid liquid interface because the ice crystals are formed in the solution which can lead to degradation, or they affect the stability of the protein. And dehydration may also occur during lyophilization, which can affect the stability of the protein. Mobility in the matrix, it is also important consideration, because molecular motion is required for the most chemical reaction. So the bimolecular reactions such as protein aggregation requires the translational motion of the reactants towards each other, which is known as diffusion. So a unimolecular reaction requires the flexional movement of the side chain carbonyl relative to the main chain. So both translational as well as flexion motion can be hindered in the solid states, hence they decrease in the reaction rate. So what we can say, the proteins are more stable in when they are stored in the solid form. Then water content may also affect the stability. So water may be present even in the solid state formulation of the proteins and peptides. It can be because of the incomplete removal of the water during the processing steps, like for example lyophilization, or maybe because of the absorption of the ambient moisture during the storage, or exposure of the to the body fluid after their administration inside the body, or residual or soft moisture have the deleterious effect on the protein stability. Various other physicochemical factors which affect the protein stability in the solid states, and the important consideration is the pressure, because during the tableting process the high pressure it is applied, which is shown to cause the loss of activity of the protein. Wurster and Turnick observed a linear decrease in the activity of the reconstituted enzyme as the compaction pressure increased from 0 to 250 megapascal, followed by a plateau region from 251 to 669 megapascal, in which additional increase in the pressure caused no further loss in the activity. Maximum loss in the activity in the plateau region was approximately 30%. Urease, lipase, alpha amylase, and beta glucuronidase shows this effect of pressure sensitivity. Now, various challenges for the protein therapeutics. So the protein solubility, route of administration, distribution, and stability all are the important factors that can hinder the successful application of a protein therapy. Proteins are the large molecules with both hydrophilic and hydrophobic properties that can make entry into the cell and other compartments of the body difficult. Half-life of the therapeutic protein can be drastically affected by the protease enzyme, protein modifying chemicals, or other clearance mechanisms. Immune response against the therapeutic protein, it is also there in some cases. This immune response can neutralize the protein and can even cause harmful reaction in the patients. Now coming to various delivery challenges. So challenges to the formulation of the proteins into an effective dosage form. This includes the stability, so that's physical stability as well as chemical stability. Physical stability, denaturation, aggregation or precipitation of the protein. Chemical stability includes oxidation, hydrolysis or deamidation of the protein. Besides this, poor intrinsic permeability of the protein because of their hydrophilic nature and large molecular size, it is very important consideration. And besides that, the proteins are susceptible to enzymatic attack, and they shows rapid post-absorption clearance inside the body. They also shows protein binding, and ultimately they have the very short biological half-life. Various delivery challenges based on the route of administration. So proteins can be administered either through invasive route, that is the parenteral route, or non-invasive routes. Non-invasive routes includes oral, transdermal, ocular, nasal, rectal or pulmonary route. Now we will discuss various challenges related to oral delivery of proteins and various strategies to overcome those challenges. Oral delivery. Oral route is the most easiest and convenient way of drug administration as compared to the parenteral route. Because of the easy delivery, patient compliance, self-medication is also possible, it is painless, and acceptable to all kinds of patients, and above all it is cost effective. However, the oral route suffers from the disadvantage with respect to the protein or peptide delivery because of the low bioavailability of the protein, that is less than 1%, that is because of the proteolytic degradation of the proteins in the GIT, and also associated with the first pass metabolism and high resistance offered by the intestinal epithelial, which limits the permeability or transfer of the protein across the gastrointestinal membrane. This figure shows different barriers which are there for the oral protein peptide delivery. The first barrier is the enzymatic degradation of the protein, because in GIT so many protease enzyme, like in the stomach pepsin, in the intestine pancreatin, chymotrypsin, trypsin enzymes are there, so that can metabolize or degrade the protein. pH degradation, it is another important consideration, because in the entire GI tract the pH is highly variable. Like in the stomach the pH ranges from 1 or 1 to 4, in the intestine the pH ranges from 6.8 to 7. So variable pH conditions are encountered, so in which some proteins can be degraded or they are not stable. Poor permeability, it is the another important consideration for the low oral bioavailability of the protein. So various gastrointestinal barrier which limits the protein bioavailability is their pre-systemic metabolism because of the enzymatic degradation of the protein. So enzymatic degradation takes place in the gut lumen, especially in the brush border and mucosal mesh. The major proteolytic enzyme in the stomach is the pepsin, and in the small intestine that includes the trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase and elastase. So the small intestine is generally the major site of absorption of the most of the drug, but because of the enzymatic activity of this proteolytic enzyme, okay, these protein drugs are not bioavailable, they are not absorbed. Mucosal barrier also limits the absorption of the protein, because mucus lining throughout the GIT mucosa, it presents as a physical barrier. Okay, the role of mucin is as a protective barrier for external or exogenous stimuli. However, this mucosal barrier can be bypassed, and scientists Oki et al. They investigated the contribution of the mucus or glycocalyx layer in the rat small intestine, and they found that the transport of the insulin across the hyaluronidase treated and untreated intestinal segments from these regional, and the permeability of the insulin for the hyaluronidase treated segment was significantly higher than that of the control group. This table summarizes the various barriers in the GIT, like in the stomach as well as in the intestine. So in the stomach, acidic environment which cause degradation of the pH sensitive or acid sensitive proteins, and besides this there are several proteolytic enzymes like pepsin which can lead to enzymatic degradation of the proteins. In the intestine, the barriers includes various protease enzymes like trypsin, chymotrypsin, elastase, pepsin, carboxypeptidase A and B, and aminopeptidase. And besides this, the absorption of the protein, it is limited because of their macromolecular nature. So that's why they are not able to cross the intestinal barrier or reaching into the systemic circulation. Various approaches for the oral delivery of proteins which have been tried, like enzyme inhibition, absorption enhancer, or chemical modification of the protein, we are going to discuss in next slides. Enzyme inhibition. So conventional enzyme inhibitors have been investigated as a mean to prevent the proteolytic degradation of the protein, and these enzyme inhibitors in the long-term therapy leads to deleterious side effects. One of the major consequences for the enzyme inhibition is the hypersecretion of the enzymes from pancreas, since the release of digestive enzyme is based on the feedback mechanism. Some examples of the enzyme inhibitors, these includes diisopropyl fluorophosphate, tosyl phenylalanine chloromethyl ketone, and tosyl lysine chloromethyl ketone. And absorption enhancer. So, intestinal absorption of the proteins can also be improved by altering the paracellular and transcellular transport pathway using a specific permeation enhancer. So, different mechanisms for permeation enhancer have been proposed. For example, loss of integrity of the cell-cell tight junction, or changes in the mucus viscosity, or changes in the membrane structure and fluidity, or receptor mediated endocytosis. However, long-term therapy with the permeation enhancer can also lead to serious side effects, and toxic peptides or toxin can also permeate through the tight junction after the application of the absorption enhancer. So here I would like to discuss one case study which utilizes the concept of enzyme inhibitor as well as permeation enhancer. So this Akira et al., they studied the effect of protease inhibitor on the intestinal absorption of the insulin, and they observed no marked hypoglycemic response when the insulin alone was administered. Obviously, because insulin is not at all absorbed upon oral administration, so no hypoglycemic response was noted. Mild increase in the hypoglycemic activity was reported when insulin was co-administered with aprotinin soybean trypsin inhibitor, that is bacitracin, and a significant increase in the hypoglycemic activity was reported when insulin was co-administered with sodium glycocholate as compared to the control. Okay, so co-administration with the enzyme inhibitor or co-administration with the permeation enhancer can lead to significant hypoglycemic response of the insulin following oral administration. Chemical modification of the proteins can also lead to improved oral bioavailability, either because of the stabilization or because of their improved permeation. So first approach is the pegylation of the protein. So proteins and peptides can be conjugated with some polymeric moieties like polyethylene glycol. It's called pegylation, and the main reason for pegylation, because the pegylation decreases the rate of clearance of the therapeutic peptide from the systemic circulation. PG also sterically masks the protein's immunogenic epitopes, because PG is an aqueous soluble polymer with large hydrated volume. PG is also reported to protect the proteins from enzymatic attack. This is thought because of the consequences of the steric effect. So it shields the protein from the enzymatic activity. Conjugation may also involve ligands which are targets for the receptor mediated endocytosis. For example, transferrin receptor mediated uptake, which ultimately increase the oral bioavailability of the proteins. Cyclization. Cyclic peptides are resistant to the proteolytic degradation, and they have higher than the expected absorption after oral administration, and cyclosporin is the classical example of the cyclic peptide. The superior oral bioavailability is because of the number of properties that includes the decreased flexibility and hydrogen bonding characteristic, usually carried out between side chains or ends of the peptide sequence through disulfide bonds, lengthening, dicarbahydrazine or lactam bridges. So cyclization is an option for some protein. Its widespread use is limited when larger peptides and proteins are needed for the therapy. Lipidization is yet another strategy for improving the oral bioavailability of the proteins. So these are nothing but these are the fatty acid conjugates of the polypeptides, and these demonstrate improved transport across the biological membrane because of the improved lipophilicity, and they also demonstrate higher stability and a longer plasma half-life. The proteins can be lipidized using the reversible aqueous lipidization, which is categorized as prodrug, or irreversible method of lipidization also there, which allows for the increased membrane permeability. The examples include caprates, that are the medium chain fatty acids, and they promotes the paracellular diffusion of class 3 drug molecule, that include the drug molecules which having higher water solubility, low permeability, that includes the protein and peptide drugs, and enhance the stability of these peptides along with the increased cellular penetration capabilities have been demonstrated using this approach. We can see the lipidization of the protein in the form of palmitylation or myristoylation. So the polypeptide chain, they are reacted with either myristoyl coenzyme or palmitoyl coenzyme acetate, and ultimately the lipidized protein it is produced, which is showing the higher permeability across the intestinal membrane. Peptide modification is another way to improve the bioavailability of the protein. The substitution of the natural L-alpha amino acids with D-alpha amino acids have been tried, because I already told in the previous version that most of the amino acids in the protein they have L-alpha configuration, but if we can replace the L-alpha configuration with the D-alpha configuration, that it can lead to the bioavailability to some extent. Peptides cleaved by the chymotrypsin, elastase, papain, pepsin, trypsin, and carboxypeptidase are cleaved minimally or not at all by these enzymes when certain residues were replaced with D amino acids. Peptide modification can increase the oral bioavailability. Therefore, the substituted peptide demonstrated high resistance to the proteolytic degradation in vitro in both human serum as well as lysosomal preparations. The simultaneously modifying both N and C terminal region with D amino acids conferred the greatest stability. Now we will discuss different nanocarriers for the transmucosal delivery of the protein and peptides. So wide range of nanocarriers have been investigated for the oral delivery of proteins and peptides. This includes but not limited to the polymeric nanoparticle, and this polymeric nanoparticle can be made of either synthetic polymer like PLA, PLGA, or semi-synthetic polymer like chitosan, or natural polymer like alginates, and so many others. Besides this, vesicular systems like liposomes, neosomes, bilosomes, layerosomes, lipidic particles like liquid crystalline nanoparticle, solid lipid nanoparticles, nanoemulsions, polymeric micelles, dendrimers, and various other carrier systems, they have been investigated for oral delivery of proteins and peptides. To understand how these nanoparticles they improve the oral bioavailability, let's understand first how the drug molecules are absorbed and what are the associated challenges. So there are two different types of cells are present in the small intestine. One is known as enterocytes and another is known as M cells. So most of the drug molecules are absorbed by a passive diffusion process through these enterocytes. So for this, the drug need to be present in the solution form. So if the drug is not water soluble, then it is not going to absorb. The second thing, for absorption, drug need to cross this lipoidal barrier. So the drug need to have some lipid solubility also. So that is known as log P or permeability. So if the drug molecule is not having the biphasic solubility or permeability, then again it will not be absorbed. Second thing, this process of passive diffusion, it is applicable only for the small molecular weight compounds, like the molecular weight which is having the molecular weight around 500 or 600, but proteins are having the molecular weight greater than 5000 or so on, so they are not able to absorb. Many drug molecules are susceptible to P-glycoprotein efflux system. They are substrate for PGP efflux system, so which also expressed onto the enterocytes. if the drug molecule is not stable in the GI condition, then it is not going to absorb. Like in the case of protein and peptides, they are susceptible to exposure by the acidic pH of the stomach, as well as various proteolytic enzymes which are present in the GIT, so which leads to premature degradation before the absorption. And last, if the drug molecule can cross all these barriers and it is absorbed, but before reaching into the systemic circulation, it first entered into the liver where the major fraction can be metabolized. So this is known as first pass metabolism. Nanoparticles are absorbed by the process endocytosis through these M cells. So endocytosis is the uptake of the particle. So there is no need for the solubility or permeability. Encapsulation of the nanopart of the protein inside the nanoparticle also offers protection to the exposure to the highly acidic pH of the stomach as well as digestive enzymes. So it protects the protein and peptide, and PGP also does not express onto these M cells, and most of the polymers or lipids which are used for the nanoparticle preparation, they are reported as an inhibitor of the PGP. So all these barriers can be overcome, and the above all, using this M cell pathway, the nanoparticles are transported into the lymphatic system first. From there they can directly reach into the systemic circulation, so that the problem of first pass metabolism can also be avoided. This schematic shows the concept of first pass metabolism. As I told earlier, free drug, either it is not absorbed because of the several challenges, and even if it is absorbed, then it first entered into the liver where the major fraction can be metabolized. So this is known as first pass metabolism. However, this nanoparticle follows the alternative pathway for absorption. So they are absorbed via these Pierce patches and they enter into the lymph, and from they directly enter into the systemic circulation. So they bypass the first pass metabolism in the liver. PLGA or PLA nanoparticles, they have been widely investigated for the oral delivery of proteins and peptides besides other small drug molecules, because they are biodegradable in nature. It is biocompatible and FDA approved polymer. It has the sustained release property, so that lead to the investigation of the single dose vaccine formulation using PLGA nanoparticles, and they are taken up by the Pierce patches efficiently. So numerous reports are available in the literature on the use of PLA or PLGA nanoparticles for vaccine and other protein like insulin through intramuscular, oral as well as nasal route. And further modification with the hydrophilic groups like PEG, poloxamer or PVA have been tried for improved properties. They are also reported. Chitosan. Chitosan is the excellent carrier for the protein or peptide delivery because it is cheap, non-toxic, biocompatible, biodegradable polymer. It is one of the most abundant available polymer available in the nature. It is having the bioadhesive and absorption enhancement property. It demonstrates the high protein loading capacity, and the preparation of chitosan nanoparticle does not require any organic solvent. So solvent free synthesis method, it is also there for, so this is very much useful for the protein and peptide delivery. However, it is not very much suitable for the oral administration because chitosan dissolve easily at the acidic pH of the stomach. So that's why the functional derivative of the chitosan, they have been reported, or proper cross-linking of the nanoparticle with different cross-linking agent to improve their stability in the stomach, they have been investigated. So I would like to report one case study from my group. We have prepared titanium oxide loaded glucomanosylated chitosan nanoparticles. So glucomanosylated was used as a ligand for targeting to the antigen presenting cell via GLUT receptor as well as mannose receptors, which are overexpressed onto the antigen presenting cell. So these are the characteristic features of different types of nanoparticle. Cytosine nanoparticle S. Cytosine nanoparticle S indicates the stabilized cytosine nanoparticle. We have used a particular cross linker to stabilize the nanoparticle, and GM, that is the glucomonosylated particles. So the particle size you can see in the slide ranges from around 120 to 170 nanometer, and the entrapment efficiency greater than 95% in all cases. And these are the SAM and TEM images of the nanoparticle. These cytosine nanoparticle, they cannot be efficiently visualized in the SAM, scanning electron microscope. In the first image one can see, but these stabilized nanoparticle, they can be efficiently seen in the scanning electron microscopy also, the second and fourth image of the stabilized nanoparticle. Because the preparation condition involved homogenization or sonication, so that's why it was essential to check the stability of the protein. So the integrity of the protein was checked by electrophoresis. We can see the single visible band for the standard titanium oxide as well as oxide extracted from different nanoparticle formulation. So we can confirm that the preparation condition did not cause any degradation of the antigen. Conformational stability of the protein is also important from the activity point of view, which was ascertained by the circular diachrys. In the CD spectra, we found the superimposable spectra for the standard antigen as well as antigen extracted from different nanoparticle formulation, which further confirms that the preparation condition did not cause any degradation or conformational changes in the antigen. This figure shows the serum IgG profile after administration of the different formulation. So we have given the first dose as at day 0 and booster dose was given at day 21. So we can see the orally administered free antigen did not elicit any antibody titer. Even the plain nanoparticle did not elicit any antibody titer. However, the orally administered stable nanoparticle as well as monosylated nanoparticle, they elicited very significant higher antibody titer in the serum. However, we could not match the levels of the antibody with the intramuscularly injected vaccine, but still, as compared to the free antigen which was administered through the oral route, we found significantly higher antibody titer in the serum, which demonstrate that the antigen can be delivered through oral route using this nanotechnology based approach. So students, let's summarize what we have learned in this module. Challenges in terms of stabilization of the protein during formulation and delivery through intended routes are there and they need to be overcome. Particularly, if we talk about the oral route, enzymatic degradation and poor intestinal permeability are the major hurdles. Various approaches like enzyme inhibition, permeation enhancer, cyclization, lipidization, they have been tried but with limited success. This nanocarrier based strategy pose the attractive alternative for the efficient delivery of the protein and peptide through oral route.